Hello, guys. David Vose here. Boy, another beautiful day. The last couple nights have been so cold, down to zero, and one night was 9 below zero. But it looks like it's going to start getting a little warmer, maybe in a couple days. And the sun's still out. We ain't got any snow yet, but I hope you're having a wonderful day. I'm having a wonderful day. I'm sitting here by the fire, just enjoying the show, right? The whole inauguration, and we saw this. I guess that's Melania. It looks like some kind of a Grim Reaper or something to me. The Mad Hatter or something. Well, in that video I did yesterday, somebody said it was a bolero hat. And, I was looking at that and they were like, oh, that's not black, Dave. It's navy. Well, it might be navy, but it sure looks black, is what I mean. It's very dark. And it is, in all fairness, pretty much black, because if you notice, she's wearing a white sort of collar. That is a symbol of the white collar Franciscan priests and so forth. And they used to don the bolero hat. They come from Bolero, Spain, near where Coronado and Columbus came. And the Spanish ended up, as we said yesterday, taking over the whole west coast of South America, all the way up through Mexico, the whole Mexican country, and all the way to Florida, and then up through California. They had all of that, the Spanish. And they had a capital in more or less Mexico City. And that was called New Spain. And they had a viceroy named Coronado. He became the viceroy of New Spain. So that reached all the way from Argentina, Peru, Mexico, Florida, and up into California, the west coast of America, all the way from North America, South America, the whole west coast, including Florida, around the Gulf. And the French had most of the rest of the United States, and the British had this little piece from New York down to West Virginia or something. So we were talking about what this outfit portended. What this outfit portended. And it's obviously some illusion to, we're going to defend you. We've got the scowl, we got our sword, we're Zorro, right? And we're going to defend you, and we're going to fight for justice and liberty. Well, I hope they're sincere, and I hope they are able to combat the forces that are controlling them like puppets. But there is a lot of illusions here, and we're going to try to weed through some of these delusions and illusions to get to the bottom of this. I don't think the people that are perpetuating these stories and myths fully understand any of this. Does anyone? Will Jesus find faith on earth when he arrives? Well, I believe he will. And that's you and I, friends. We're going to literally understand what's going on, what this fight, what this battle is. It's literally the battle of good and evil. It started off with hand-to-hand combat, wars, fighting, military, and it's now come down to the battle of the mind, of good and evil, the hearts of men. And if it weren't for that Constitution of the United States of America, friends, you all need to pay homage to that Constitution, divinely inspired. If it weren't for that, we'd all be gone a long time ago, because darkness would have won this world with the battle, with the sword, with the gun, with the gunpowder. But the bad guys found out that murdering people, their blood ran into the ground and was seed, and they just grew up twice as many, thrice as many, and they couldn't defeat them. So it came down to the fact that when the good guys came to America, they realized they couldn't fight off this war by means of war. They had to use a different tactic. They had to make a constitution and libraries and poetry, and axioms and truths that all men could understand, that could not be thwarted. And so we're fighting that battle. And the battle is that it's come down to some kind of a duel between good and evil, which is the flesh and the spirit. And you notice that the white is underneath and the black is on the top. And all of our judges don this black robe because we're under an evil power, an evil force, battling the spiritual and trying to cloak it and hide it from everyone. And I don't know how many people in this world really understands any of this, including Trump, Melania, or Elon Musk. They are only puppets in this play. But I'm gonna take you through some very interesting articles on the bolero hat and what it means and what she's trying to portray. A woman Zorro, or, a Batman, the Lone Ranger, or, a Franciscan priest who's just defending the poor Native Americans, Tonto. Let's get right into it. Let me show you some things.
In 17th century Mexico, the most feared and respected institution is the
So, this Zorro is interesting. Zorro is a fictional character, but look at, he's wearing that bolero hat. Gacho, or whatever they call it. Gucci. I don't know. Something. But I think it's a bolero hat. But it's definitely Spanish, and it's definitely Catholic. If you notice, Melania had a white collar. Everything we have in this country is based on this white collar. And it's a cloak. Notice Zorro had a cape, a cloak. Today we just have these black suits, but they were black robes. Franciscan priests. And they were, the Spanish were very Catholic. And they took Argentina, Chile, Peru, Mexico, and they were also in Los Angeles and the west coast of the United States early on. So the Spanish had quite a bit originally of the United States, but on the west coast. The French had the middle part, most of the middle part, all the way to the east coast in Canada, and all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico and Louisiana. The British, they only had the 13 colonies from around New York down to, I guess, Virginia, wherever that little area was. South Carolina. So Zorro was the Spanish priestly man, cloaking the white truth, cloaking it with the dark deception. So this is a mystical, it's kind of like the dualism that we see everywhere. You never know who's what. The good guys are wearing black, and they're cloaking the white. So underneath they're pure, but outwardly it's going to be bloody. They got to use violence to get to the pure. Or are they saying they know that the human nature is good, that the world is good, life is good? It's our spiritual nature underneath, inside. But on the outside, the flesh is very evil and dark, and there's going to be war, and there's going to be judgment, and they're following the deity of this world. There's no way you could not see that in the whole white collar concept here. And so Zorro is a fictional character, probably, but yet based on maybe a few legends. But what is this legend going back to? Think about the Lone Ranger, his best buddy was Tonto. Whoever these original people were, remember Cordoba? In fact, the Cordoba is a place where they make these bolero hats. Coronado may have worn a bolero hat, being from Spain, and it was quite popular in those days. Of course, you see him with pictures of him with other hats, but it was a popular hat, and he is depicted in that hat and a lot of the depictions of Coronado, and was looking for the 7 cities of gold, which he ended up in this area in New Mexico where I live, where I live in Cibola County, which is the 7 cities of gold county that they were trying to find. The Zuni Indians have a city that was one of the 7 cities of gold, I'd say it's about 20 miles from me, 25, 30 miles. And they don't let anybody go there. We don't know what it is. It's an ancient city of gold. Now, I imagine they took all the gold somewhere and hid it. And we could talk about that. I've talked a little bit about that. But there's a lot of this that's mysterious. Or should I say mysterious? But let me just show you this. It says, Zorro, a fictional character created in 1919 by writer Johnston McCulley, the masked, sword-wielding vigilante, defends the poor and victimized against the forces of injustice. Well, if that's what Melania was trying to portray, maybe in her mind that's what she's trying to portray. But I find that people are being used as pawns. There's a real reason that the world has these different sides and the Spanish, and there's a reason why the world broke into the Dutch, the French, the Portuguese, the Spanish, the British, and all these guys, were they all fighting against each other? Or were there only 2 sides? And various camouflaged sides that belong to one side or another. If you look at America, where they all came, they knew this would be the battleground. So the French took one area, the Spanish took another, the British took another. Well, originally, the Spanish had the upper hand. They got most of the territory. But the British had something that the Spanish didn't have. They had these individuals in the Bavarian Illuminati that had this great masterful plot. The world at large to this day, does not know the implications of these 2 sides. And I will tell you, it all goes back to Pierre Valdez, who was a French individual who was a descendant of Mary Magdalene and Jesus Christ. He's in the novels, the great romance. This is where romance novels came from. It wasn't necessarily like a smutty little romance novel. When it began, it was romantic because the prince and the princess, and the prince was the prince because he was a descendant of Mary Magdalene and Jesus Christ. Now, today, the story is not known. They don't understand what this goes back to. We have this vague idea. We have these little fairy tales, Mother Grimm, or what is it called? Mother Goose, the Brothers Grimm. They went around to Europe collecting these stories. Why were there stories? Almost like biblical parables, like the Greek mythologies. What were they? What were these mythologies, these stories trying to intimate? Well, we've got the round table. There's always a round table with 12 seating at it. Even Jesus has got 12 disciples. It has to do with astrology. All of this information, this mysterious esoteric knowledge. And by the way, that's a very important point, and it's some evidence for things that I'm saying that sometimes I don't know exactly how to give you direct evidence for. But when we look at the biblical text or Greek mythology, you'd be persuaded quite easily, if you were an academic, to say, oh, well, those are just stories that tell, moral lessons, but they're not real. So Abraham wasn't a real person. Jacob with his 12 sons, that's astrology. There wasn't a real Jacob. But let me ask you this question. King Arthur in the Round Table, he had 12 knights. were there really 12 knights? Was there a King Arthur? Well, we don't know for sure if there was a man who was named Arthur, or if his name was Art or Bert, but it was patterned after somebody. Perhaps his name was Arthur. And did he have a round table? Well, maybe he had knights, which is depicted in the story as 12, because they're trying to tell you that he was connected somehow to the great mystery, the historical destiny. So King Arthur was a real person, or depicts something real. And he was connected to the destiny of the world. And it's not completely made up out of whole cloth. It's a depiction of hundreds of years of history into a little parable. I don't think that every little detail that's in the story of some romantic, romance story from the Dark Ages about a man who had a round table and some knights, I don't think it's all literal in every detail, but there certainly was a King Arthur. There certainly was a lineal descendant from Jesus Christ and Mary Magdalene, because it's integral to our story that these things actually happen, because we're actually here and we're the result of all of this. So yeah, there was a Jacob, there was an Abraham, there was an Adam, and there was a King Arthur. It's real, guys. The problem is does anyone today understand the roots of the esoteric wisdom? Or are they simply trying to mask it, or trying to understand it, or misinterpreting it, or even maligning it, hiding it to us so that we don't know the meaning, and then misinterpreting it and misapplying it, and pretending that the good guy's really the bad guy? You see, they know the story. They know they're the bad guys, but they got to present themselves as the good guys. So who were the good guys? It wasn't the northern ones who came down from the Illuminati. I guarantee the bad guys are the Bavarian Illuminati. Now, how they became the Bavarian Illuminati, I don't know that we'll get to in this video. We've talked about it very much. It had something to do with Judean beliefs. I'll put it to you that way. It had something to do with the fleshly nature. That's why Genghis Khan destroyed and wiped out everybody. And what was he doing? Colonizing? They were trying to murder people. They were trying to transplant cultures. They were taking what they considered barbarians, like cannibals and individuals that were superstitious pagans that didn't believe in order and law. They thought the law was a good thing to make a more advanced civilization, to advance physically and materially with wealth and power and bigger cities. And we've got to have organization, regiment, law. And so the world originally was law and order, and now we're grace. But grace hasn't gotten to the point where it's worldwide. It's only a concept. But it's grace that fights the law. So the original Israel, they were told you can have the truth, the light, the love, the grace. They rejected it at Mount Horeb. They turned to the golden calf. And the angel who fell, maybe he wasn't so bad, right? He's the dark side, the one on the bottom who will not pardon your sins, right? This is the fleshly nature, the gravity, the law of nature that punishes you when you jump off a cliff and smack yourself into a wall. It's just the carnal nature, the instinctual nature, and controlling it with law and order. So they didn't necessarily, a lot of these people that are the bad guys didn't necessarily think of themselves as the bad guys. And they might not have been the bad guys back in those days. Genghis Khan was probably trying to, with the sword, subvert the world into submission to Yahweh. which is the I am vengeance, I am law and order, control. We've got to advance, go around the wheel of rebirth and advance and conquer all the beasts with the sword and the beast nature. So it was a schoolmaster that led to Christ, as well as it was a hard taskmaster that must be thrown out. Why would the Lord pick somebody he has foreknowledge to run his vineyard who ended up being a hard taskmaster? That he had to come later and say, oh, what are you doing? You haven't pruned my vine. You haven't cultivated the field. You haven't watered it. It's dying. I'm getting rid of you and giving it to a people that will produce its fruit. Okay, well, why did the Lord not know in his foreknowledge that this guy, newly converted, you're not supposed to appoint someone newly converted, Paul says, because this is what happened to the devil. He was newly converted. What does that mean? It's just a parable about the lower ego that's first. Just like Leah covenant was, Yahweh covenant was the first. And then we got Ra'el, or the covenant of Christ, love and grace. We haven't even got to that yet. It's been introduced, but will the world have faith when Christ returns? Well, a few of us will, and then we will establish in righteousness the grace. But right now, we're still under the law. The world is, except for us Christians. And guess what? Most Christians aren't under grace. They're under the law. They're still judges and jailers and doctors and doing all this evil, material, dark stuff, including the black cloak. It's almost as if they knew it. Someone knew it. Let's dress them up in a black cloak. Cloaking what, Lord? Oh, the white purity. All the Franciscan priests and the Jesuits are wearing black robes. This is not a coincidence that your judge is wearing a black robe, because he's judging you with judgment and vengeance. But underneath, there's a purpose behind it all. Eventually, we're going to disrobe and get our white robe. And how do we do it? Well, we go to class. We go through the degrees. We graduate. We get our white robe and our crown. Except for when you graduate in this world, you don't get the crown. Not yet. You get a black robe and a square hat. Okay, this is Saturn, Satan. Who is Satan? It's just the necessity of the ignorance and the darkness from which we came. We're learning. We're growing through the stages of Satan's world, the world of trial and error. We are trying to get to the place where we become the conqueror. So let's go back. It says, John Macaulay, the masked, sword-wielding vigilante, defends the poor and victimized against the forces of injustice. And his feats have been featured in virtually every form of media. Friends, we're going to find out this has to do with Batman, of Dracula. That's who's doing this. Count Dracula, the vampire, Zorro, the S, the serpent. I know. You'll see here. You'll see. Hold on. Zorro, whose name in Spanish means fox. Now, what is that? Fox. Fox is very close to Vox. Vox is the German way of saying the English Vos. And the Latin was valley. It started off valley. It was literally the word the valley. The Albigensians were in the mountains, the Alps. The valley was beneath the mountains. And there were all the children of Mary Magdalene in the valley. And many of them fled to the mountains. And the Inquisition on the Waldensians, or the valley people, the Valde, and the Valde became the German Vox, and then the British Vos. We've talked about this. In French, it was Valdez, the Pierre Valdez. Now, his name Percy is another way of saying Peter, or Pierre, and Peter was the Pope, the father, right? The Padre. And they were the good guys. They were the Vox. They were the ones trying to defeat the enemy, the evil. And they were the Pierre Valdez, the Percival in the romance novels, the prince who would wed the princess, and Sleeping Beauty, and all these stories. All the stories. Count Dracula and Batman all come from this. Batman also had a cape, right? And sucked blood like a vampire. And who was the Dracula? Who was the Count Dracula? Vlad the Impaler was a Jewish line brought from Baghdad by the Holy Roman Empire, Charlemagne, who married into the line of this man who was a Judean from Baghdad, from Jeconiah, from 600 BC, was taken into captivity. They were still there. Now, there was another line from Judea, and that was Jesus and Mary Magdalene and their child, which was at Marseille, France. All the history tells us Mary came over on a boat with 72. That was the whole Sanhedrin. To start, what is it? Why is it? Most of these parables are symbolic. Why did she have 72 with her? In other words, she had the government of Jesus Christ with her. But that government was destined to have a battle with the dark side for 2,000 years, until one day the cloak will be coming off. No one's going to understand this. Not even the people that are perpetuating it. Not even Melania Trump knows what the heck's going on. They think they're the saviors. Nobody's bad. We're all trying to do the right thing, but a lot of us are ignorant. The Judeans aren't bad because they're trying to get everybody to believe in Jerusalem and the law and taking over and thinking they're the chosen race. They don't understand the chosen race and what it means. It's all of Israel, and there are only 2 tribes. And they're the lower part, the carnal nature, the laws, the commandments. It's not about racism. It's about a whole big parable. The 10 tribes went into all the world, and they became the world. There's no separation. All the world is one. Buddhism, Shintoism, Zoroastrianism, Taoism, all of the isms come from the prophets, Ezekiel, Daniel. Daniel was Zoroaster, number 2. Ezekiel was Buddha. Elisha was Dionysus, that turned the water into wine, that started the tradition of Syria. And Elisha went and raised the widow's son, was a priesthood. We've been in all this, but it all connects. It's everything you've ever read is all about the same story. Clear back to the Garden of Eden, the good and evil, and the big fight. And it's all a big mystery, and nobody knows. So Vox, Valet, Pierre Valdez, was likely based on the Mexican folk tale of a noble bandit who fought on behalf of the peasantry and indigenous peoples. The character first appeared in Macaulay's serialized 5-part story, The Curse of Capistrano, which was published in the pulp magazine All Story Weekly beginning in August 1919. Zorro's true identity is Don Diego Vega, later changed to Don Diego de la Vega, a young nobleman who lived in Los Angeles, California, during the early 19th century when the area was still under Spanish rule. The Spanish. He's wearing the bolero Spanish Franciscan priest hat with the white collar like Melania. And what was he there for? Well, Don Diego became the swordsman, Zorro. Z, S, Superman, the S. Batman, the vampire. Which is it? Well, he's got a dark cloak, but we don't know, and nobody knows. To this day, nobody understands who Satan is. We got people running around wanting to be Satanists, but they believe that Satan is evil. You know how many people nowadays you walk up and say, "Are you a Christian?" Or, "No, I'm a Satanist." I like to just smack them because I don't think they understand a word of what they're saying. They're rebellious little twits running around with dark Gothic looks. Gothic, Bavarian, evil. They have no idea the insanity that their mind has come to. So he comes to defend the people of Los Angeles from political oppression. Zorro famously uses the letter Z as his mark. The mark of the beast? All this is related. I'm telling you, the serpent mark on Superman's chest, it's not an S, it's a serpent, and his father is L. I know. And he comes here from another planet or from another place, and he's like Jesus or something. He's a defender of the faith. And he's trying to save mankind from the dark forces. And there was even a movie where Superman fights Batman. I think they've gotten two of these characters almost mixed up, and it's almost like the lower ego and the higher ego fighting in one body. Using his sword to carve it into the clothes, or sometimes the bodies. Well, he's a good man, right? Right into their body. Of his adversaries in 3 swift strokes. Zorro is not only a master swordsman, but a skilled marksman and horseman. A horseman! Lord, Jesus comes riding on a white horse with a sword. Is he Zorro? In 1920, Douglas Fairbanks starred in the film adaptation of Macaulay's story titled The Mark of Zorro, which became a commercial hit and an enduring classic. It was this film that established Zorro's iconic black costume, which featured a cape, a gaucho hat, and a mask that concealed the top half of his face. Isn't that what Melania was doing, concealing her brow, the top half of her face? With the white collar and the black, I know people are saying it's navy, but it looked very black and dark when you looked at her. It's very dark. Let's put it that way. And that's why the military always wears dark. And that's why the priesthood always wears dark. And that's why Jehovah's Witnesses have to wear dark. And Mormons got to wear dark black suits and white underneath, a white shirt underneath, because they're cloaking and hiding the truth. As a result of the film's success, Macaulay's wrote more than 60 more Zorro stories, starting in 1922. The last was published in 1959, a year after Macaulay's death. There's a picture. Now, of course, he's not wearing black there, but look at his hat. It's black, and he's got that little mask. It's like it's all symbolic. The hat's kind of. Remember Melania, when she was being filmed, she was squinting her eyes and scowling. In addition to this success on the printage page, Zorro remained a popular draw at the box office, and Fairbanks returned to the role in a movie sequel, Don Q, Son of Zorro. The 1940 remake of The Mark of Zorro starred Tyrone Power in the title role. In The Mask of Zorro in 1998, Anthony Hopkins, oh really, played an aging Don Diego who emerges from retirement to train Antonio Banderas' character to be his successor as Zorro. Banderas reprised that role in The Legend of Zorro in 2005. Zorro's television appearance included Walt Disney's Zorro series. Oh, even Walt Disney, the dark, evil, wicked, murdering, where are we at? Walt Disney, yeah, the bad guy. He's always wearing black too, if you've noticed. And he looks exactly like Donald Trump's father, Walt Disney. I know. They really have a striking resemblance. So the Walt Disney Zorro, starring Guy Williams as the masked hero, as well as a syndicated live-action show in 1990 and 1993, and numerous animated series. And then we get the Lone Ranger, who's friends with Tonto. Now, I don't know to what extent any of these traditions go back to one side or the other, because some say this was not De Vega, but was some William Lepore, I forget. I think we already heard about that guy. It's partly based on different individuals, this Zorro guy. So one of the individuals who were wearing the bolero, the Spanish inquisitor or whatever that was here, fighting for justice and vengeance upon the enemies, was very much a friend of Tonto, meaning that I believe this tradition goes back to the fact that the Cordoba, who came and tried to, well, this is part of the story, but I think it's all intertwined, and I don't know that anybody's been able to, because remember, these are novels of people going back into history, trying to dig up this information of real history. And so there is parts of the truth in the Zorro, Lone Ranger, Batman, and there's parts of the other side. So what is the Cordoba? It's a lot different than Coronado, which is part of the story that we'll get to. But the Cordoba, what does that have to do with it? Remember, they're wearing the bolero hat, which is made in Cordoba. So this will blow your mind. Cordoba's period of greatest glory began in the 8th century after the Moorish conquest. The Moors are Africans. I know. When some 300 mosques, they were Islamic friends, 300 mosques and innumerable palaces and public buildings were built to rival the splendors of the Constantinople, Damascus, and Baghdad. In the 13th century, under Ferdinand III, the Saint Cordoba's great mosque was turned into a cathedral. So when the Catholics took it over, they turned it into a cathedral, but it was a mosque. Cordoba is a mosque. They were the people that were run out of Spain. And they were Islamic, and they were Christian, and they were Sephardic. That combination is what led to this symbol that we have, this bolero hat. But why were the Franciscan Catholics wearing the Cordoba hat? You know, is it just some kind of coincidence that they donned their enemy's hat? You know, this is something that bothers me. Today, Islam has gotten a very bad name, at least amongst Christians, right? And I think most people think, oh, there's guys over there with turbans, still wearing these weird-looking robes, and oh, they don't believe in Jesus, and you know, we have all these things. Well, originally, Muslims did believe in Jesus. I mean, they still believe in Jesus. But remember, they've always believed in Jesus. And things have changed. I mean, like the Sunnis, the Shias, the Sufis, they have these different sects. And they all believe different things. They fight with each other. And their religions, they're not the ancient truths, just like Christianity, Protestant, Catholic. That's not the teachings of Jesus. And Sufism and Shiism and these isms have nothing to do with the teachings of Muhammad. And the Quran, it was originally scripture. It was a sect of Christianity. They definitely believed in Jesus. And the idea that they didn't believe that Jesus died on the cross is simply a spiritual, kind of like a Gnostic version of it, which is that Christ himself was raised, didn't really die. It was only his body that died. That's where that comes from. So in 800, right after Muhammad, the Moors were Islamic, but they didn't run around wearing robes and turbans. They had bolero hats. They had swords. They wore regal clothing and were powerful warriors and pushed back the whole Holy Roman Empire and never let them take Spain. And at one point, they were into France. Now, eventually, the Holy Roman Empire pushed them out and drove them out. But as they were driving out the Moors, they were driving out the original Christians. The original Christians had much more to do with Islam than today we're ever been allowed to know. And so Cordoba was a mosque. And it says, it was great mosque was turned into the cathedral and new defensive structures, particularly the Alcázar de los Reyes Cristianos and the Torre Portales de Galileo. Founded by the Romans in the 2nd century BC near the pre-existing Tartessic Cordoba capital of the Beatic, Cordoba acquired great importance during the period of the Augustus. It became the capital of the emirate depending on Damascus in the 8th century, In 929, Abderrahman III established it as the headquarters of the independent caliphate. Cordoba's period of greatest glory began in the 8th century, after the Moorish conquest, with some 300 mosques and innumerable palaces and public buildings were built to rival the splendors of Constantinople. Damascus and Baghdad in the 13th century, under Ferdinand III, Cordoba's great mosque was turned into the cathedral, and new defensive structures, particularly in the Alcázar de los Reyes Cristianos. The historic center of Cordoba now comprises the streets surrounding the great mosque and all the parcels of land opening onto these, together with all the blocks of the houses around the mosque cathedral. This area extends to the other bank of the river Guadalquivir, to include the Roman bridge in the Calahorra in the south, to the Cali San Fernando in the east. See, Fernando. Oh, Fernando. You know, this was part of Spanish heritage. The black Moor Islamic Spanish heritage in the bolero hat. And so the real Islamic peoples weren't anything like today's Sufi Shia Muslims, friends. But let's go back to what we were saying. What does it have to do with the Coronado? Well, Francisco, there's that Francisco, Vázquez de Coronado, was a Spanish conquistador. So he was Catholic, but yet he's wearing the bolero Islamic, using words for centuries, is intertwined with the true Christians. And the Spanish conquistador who led an expedition in 1540 to find the 7 cities of Cibola. Remember, I live in New Mexico in Cibola County. This is where he was trying to find the 7 cities of gold. The Zuni Indians here, 30 miles from me, are still secluding and preserving one of the 7 cities of gold. And I have just been told about some ancient ruins a few miles from my home that I'm going to go check out when spring comes, but I don't want to go right now. So this was 1540. Remember, Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492. So they were both over here about the same time. Remember now, Columbus was sent in 1492, sailed the ocean blue, and was sent here by the original people that took Spain. As soon as they took Spain from the Moors, Ferdinand and Isabella sent him over. But it was from Spain. Coronado was also sent from Spain just about 40 years later. But he was sent from a different king, King Charles V of Spain. And kind of for a different reason. Now look what it says. This is Antonio de Mendoza was a Spanish colonial administrator and the first viceroy of New Spain, who was what they called it New Spain. He was the viceroy, I guess, like the ruler of all of this area, from Chile, Peru, Mexico, all the way up into California. And so their kind of capital was Mexico City. This was New Spain. It was a Spanish colony that centered on present-day Mexico City. King Charles V of Spain appointed Mendoza as Viceroy of New Spain in 1535. That was 35 years after Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492. Less than 40 years. Mendoza was born in Alcalá La Real, Spain, and was the son of a prominent family of the soldiers and statesmen. He served as Viceroy of New Spain from 1535 to 1550. He also served as the second Viceroy of Peru from 1551 until his death in 1552. Mendoza's accomplishments including establishing the foundation of colonial government in New Spain, meaning Mexico and California and Peru, improving relations between Spaniards and American Indians. Oh, there's your Tonto. You see, the British didn't like the Indians. They wiped them out. And a lot of Columbus's people came over and scalped Indians and so forth. But not so with Coronado. He liked the natives. And he was trying to help Tonto. So this is where the story with the Lone Ranger comes in, and he's got his best friend is Tonto. Fostering economic development, particularly in mining, playing a key role in the Coronado Entrada and expedition to the north. AI says Francisco Vaquez de Coronado was a Spanish conquistador who led an expedition in 1540 to find the 7 cities of Cibola, also known as the 7 cities of gold. So this really interests me because I am right in smack in the middle of this, and I've literally got ancient Indian ruins on my property here. And I've showed you guys that in some of my videos when I'm doing my walking on the property. The cities were mythical lands of gold that the Spanish explorers believed existed in the American Southwest. Coronado's expedition found no evidence of the cities. Well, of course they're not going to tell you. But do you know that in a little mountain just south of me, here in New Mexico, well, look, you got to see this. And there's no way you can't put 2 and 2 together here. Victorio Peak. Now, why is it called Victorio? Because it was Spanish. We would say victory, right? What kind of victory is at this peak? Well, Victorio Peak is a high rocky outcropping in the Jimbrillo Basin in southern New Mexico. This was one of Chief Victorio's hideouts. Chief? A victory? And he was the site of a battle in 1880 between Victorio's Apaches. Oh, I love those Apaches. The Apache Indians have some land right, not very far from me. I'm surrounded by Navajo, Apache, Zuni, Hopi, and I don't know how many other, Pueblo Indians. But the Apache have some beautiful land as you go into over the Arizona border, with these beautiful white trees along this river and these bluffs and cliffs along the sides. And it's like, I almost think I would love to go in there with a tent and a hatchet and a matches and maybe a frying pan and a few things, a rope and some twine. And I'd like to just stay in there for a while. It's the most beautiful place in all the world. And it's secluded. I mean, it's hundreds of miles from anything. But anyway, the Apaches in the U.S. Army, 9th Cavalry, Buffalo Soldiers. Additionally, an American gold prospector claimed to have found hidden treasure inside the mountain in the late 1930s. There's a picture of it. Now, that looks very, very close, Victoria Peak, to the Mystery Mountain where I found my oracle rock that the Lord gave me, like a Urim and Thummim type thing that I've talked about in some of my other videos. And you need to go back and watch that video, a couple of them that I've done on this. But this whole area is full of some sacred places. On top of that mountain is an altar with the name of Yahweh written in paleographic Hebrew. And at the base of that mountain is a great stone with the 10 Commandments written in paleographic Hebrew, dated from 106 BC, or right around the time of Christ. And it's literally spoken about in the Book of Mormon. Where Abinadi wrote down the 10 Commandments, where King Noah had this big city by a big mountain. And this, I'm convinced, this Mystery Mountain of the Decalogue Stone is the spot. Now, so look at the treasure claims. Milton Dock and Ova Babe Noss claim to have discovered gold and artifacts inside the peak in 1933. Numerous books, the Gold House Trilogy by John Clarence, news reports, and a 2023 docu-series, Gold Lies at Videotape, purport to document the history of the discovery of the disposition of the treasure. Now, friends, I don't want to make this video about this, but I just want you to know that that gold was in the form of gold bars. Now, it was a battle that the American armies fought with the native Indians. And evidently, they took the gold from the Indians and melted it down into bars. And you could see the Spanish regalia and the suits and the army suits and all There was all kinds of treasures that was in this cave under this mountain, and it was enough gold that it would probably buy the United States and our treasury. Now, I don't remember the exact number of bars of gold, but remember, each bar of gold is like a brick, and there were thousands of them. I don't remember the exact number, but it was so much money that it would have financed the world, literally. And this was all gold that, what, they just poofed out of air? I mean, it's been admitted that our government took that gold and hid it there, and this man found it, and then they confiscated it, and then they encircled it with some fence and claimed it was a military site. And the other mountain is also surrounded by these fences with signs on it saying $50,000 fine and 5 years in prison. They don't want you there. When I jumped the fence and went in there and found these artifacts, I had a Black Hawk helicopter land on the mountain and chase me into a ravine, and I hid in a cave. And it's, I tell the story in other videos, but if I told you the story, you probably wouldn't even believe me. It was so amazing. But there is gold in their hills. And that gold is so much gold that there is no explanation for it, but that the 7 cities of gold was found. And it was finally hid up in this mountain. And that's all I'll say about it today. But I want to go back to what I was saying. It says, the legend of the 7 cities of Cibola began in the 1500s. So this is, with Coronado. The first reports of the cities came from survivors of the Narvaez expedition in 1527. The Franciscan friar Marcos de Niza claimed to have seen the cities in the distance in 1539. The search for the cities. The governors of New Spain invested heavily in the search for the cities. Now why would this Spanish expedition that found the New World and created New Spain, Coronado, why would his mission expressly be that he was going to go find these 7 cities of gold? And it would seem very odd because they tell you that the only reason that they were looking for them is some priest said he saw it, like some legend or something. Nobody believes in old legends that, some guy said he said something or saw something. If some guy said he saw something, that fantastic. Oh, we found the 7 cities of gold, and you would maybe send an expedition with 15 guys. Go check it out. But Coronado came with all of his men and all of his explorers in this big expedition and conquered this world. And his main purpose was trying to figure out and get to this city, which was like an ancient Jerusalem, which is all spoken of in the Book of Mormon, by the way. There was a city called Jerusalem here in about this same area. And at that time, there was a border right about where we have a border now, the Mexican border. And south of the Mexican border in those days was the Lamanites, and north of the border was the Nephites, which this word Nepha has come down to us as Nava by the Spanish way of understanding the F. They put it into a V, and it's the Navajo. So Coronado explored as far as Kansas. Well, they tell you this, but he knew where the gold was. That's why they got this county called Cibola right here. And it's still being protected by the Zuni native peoples here. The search for the cities destroyed many other sites. The significance of the legend. The legend of the 7 cities of Cibola was popular in the 16th century. The legend has been documented in both Spanish and Native American folklore. So even the native peoples are talking about it. The legend has featured in works of popular culture. So there's your Lone Ranger and Tonto. They worked together as a team. These were not the same as the British people that came over here to massacre the natives and take it over by brute force. These depicted as someone who came to protect and to save and defend the native peoples that lived here. The Lone Ranger, renegade, lawman in the American West, a fictional character of the American radio and television program, books, films, and comics. In all media, the Lone Ranger fictions are similar. John Reed was born in 1850 and was the sole survivor of a group of Texas Rangers who were ambushed by outlaws who killed 5 Rangers, including his older brother Daniel. The Indian Tonto found him and nursed him to health. Reed then donned a black mask made from his dead brother's vest, mounted his stallion, Silver, hi-oh Silver, and roamed the West as the Lone Ranger to aid those in need, to fight evil and establish justice. Liberty and justice for all, friends. You guys, you have no idea. It's not the British who brought liberty and justice for all. The character was created in the Lone Ranger radio program of George W. Trindle and Fran Stryker, first aired on the radio station WXYZ in Detroit, Michigan in 1933. At the beginning of the Nazi, thing, the 1933, when Hitler started coming into power, the radio program was carried by more than 400 American stations. By the end of the decade, remember, a lot of the people in America in those days were for the Germans. The Ford Motor Company, IBM, Microsoft, all these companies were all secretly W. Bush Prescott. Bush's father owned a bank and was financing Hitler. I know. Our presidents were financing Hitler. And to this day, all the presidents, they act like they don't like each other, but it's a scam, friends. So Trump is from, the Drumps are from Germany, Elon Musk, and it's just a continuation of the same scam. And their goal is complete world domination. Do they really think they're evil? Does Trump think, I'm evil? No. He probably thinks he's Zorro. And Melania thinks she's fighting all the evil and saving the children. You see, but there's something going on that they don't understand. They're just pawns. It was a radio that made the Lone Rangers theme song, Gioacchino, Rossini, William Tell's Overture, a familiar tune. Dun 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 dun. Yes, familiar tune in every child's repertoire. It was a radio that made hi-ho Silver and away familiar playground exclamation. The Lone Ranger's first movie serial appeared in 1938. This is all German propaganda, by the way. In 1949, a television version of the radio show debuted on the ABC network, and the sounds were linked to images and actors who became equally familiar. Clayton Moore played the Lone Ranger for the majority of the episodes, and Jay Silverheels became the embodied Tonto. Although the radio program ended in 1954, right after the war, and the television show in 1957, the Lone Ranger's adventures continued in various forms, including the movies The Legend of the Lone Ranger, 1981, and The Lone Ranger in 2013. We've got Western movies, the Western genre of novels and short stories, the American West, the counterparts of the Gacho literature of Argentina, and the tales of the settlement of the Australian outback. The genre reached its greatest popularity in the early middle decades of the 20th century. So, do I think that this Trump presidency is going to bring salvation to the world? Absolutely not. Do I think that Trump's presidency is what's prophesied in the Bible, that we're about to go through the Great Tribulation, and that these guys don't know what they're doing, and they don't know they're playing the part? They don't know why they're cloaking their garments. They're just copying some Franciscan in the 14th century, but they don't really know the implications of all of this. I think a man who probably did very bad things to get to the place where he is might still have a heart that wants to be good. But he might be seeking power as well. He might be seeking fame, but he also might be thinking that, hey, I'm doing the right thing. I'm the good guy. I'm just telling you, with all their intentions, Elon may be, in his mind, he might be trying to bring world peace. But he's not going to do it through AI. He's mistaken, and it's worse than just mistaken. He's been corrupted now by the bug. He's playing a part. He's just a puppet or a muppet, and he doesn't even know it. He can't even feel that hand up his dress, making him talk, telling him what to do. It's all going to play out, the flesh and the spirit. There's going to be a battle. It's a battle for the minds of the world. The false prophet shall battle with the true prophet of the Lord. The Elijah class will bring fire down from heaven. And all those of the world will have to make the decision. We're in the valley of decision. The mountain that will be split into two when Christ returns. And we'll all be there in the valley and we'll have to decide. We're all just children of the Lord after all. Even Judas was only playing a part. But the point is that not only is some of these elite deceived by their own shenanigans and they don't even know they're being corralled into these things that they're doing, but some of you are so hopeful that our world is going to be better and we're going to be happy and make America great again, that you don't even realize that that job is for Jesus Christ, and that's what's about to happen. The truth, the enlightenment will make the world better. When somebody comes along who understands the grace of the Lord Jesus Christ and teaches it's up to all of us together to bring the kingdom and to shine the light, and not for somebody to come along as a, the guy on the white horses, there's two of them. There's Antichrist, there's Christ, there's nobody else. None of us are going to save the world because we get a sword and become a vigilante. We may have all good intentions. We're going to get rid of the evil, but that's not what Jesus told us to do. It's not what he told Peter. He said, put your sword away. Anyone who lives by the sword will die by the sword. You know that Trump is possibly trying to be a peacemaker, but he's the head of an entire army, the most powerful army that's ever lived. And I guarantee there's going to be some wars. I just heard, like out of nowhere, I thought Russia was the great Russia, and they're about to win. There was all these people, propaganda pieces all over Russia's winning. Now all of a sudden, on a dime, it's like boom. As soon as Trump becomes president, Russia's about to collapse. Russia's collapsing. Their economy's collapsing. And Trump's going to put more sanctions on them. But that's not what he told us. He acted like he wasn't going to do any stuff like that. And I thought 1 minute they were going to make a deal and everything was going to, be fine. And he was going to bring in the one world government. But it looks like no. Do you think Russia's going to collapse before they decide to launch their missiles? Do you think they're going to just accept defeat? I don't think so. And I don't know if any of this propaganda about them collapsing is even true, but it's been going around the last couple of days. They're collapsing now. You get pictures with Putin with a sad face and so forth. But, I don't know how much of that I believe. But it's certainly the narrative now. And I'm telling you, there's nothing that any carnal man or government or president can do to save this world. We're about to enter into the great tribulation. They have no idea what's about to happen with all their efforts and their best, intentions. It's going to come down all around us soon because they cannot understand that they must put their swords away, that they must proclaim the gospel of Jesus Christ. And I don't think they're going to do that. I absolutely know they won't. I, for one, believe in the scripture We're about to go into the Great Tribulation, and all of you who get so exhilarated and happy that maybe Trump's going to make us great again. I mean, it's almost as if you're thinking, wow, maybe he is going to be like Hitler. And it's almost like you want that. Let's just take him out. You know, I'm tired of it, you know. But, friends, whoever lives by the sword will die by the sword. No, there is no answer. Not politically. The only answer is Jesus Christ, my friends. And if you say, well, there's no harm in wishing him well and voting for him and hoping for the best. Well, you did that. But if you think that you have to cooperate with this, what's playing out, if in your own mind you think, well, you know, we've got to just let go of some of our freedoms, maybe give Trump all the power he needs, we got to back him, salute, because we're putting all of our hope in this man. What's going to happen is you're going to be deceived to the point that you're blinded and you're going to worship government. Your idea that, well, let's back government, let's try it, let's get some more police on the street and some more military, and let's have a war, and maybe we can fix this world. Let's throw some people out and put them in a jail, or, you know, deport them or something, and all this is going to make a better world. We'll try to make a better economy. It's not going to happen, because we can't get there that way, through war, through anything like that. Are you willing to back Trump no matter what he says or does? When he goes and says, okay, I'm handing over the world government to Jerusalem. It's a prophecy in the Bible. Yay, Christ has come, or our Messiah, right? And all the Gentiles will bow down, and you'll worship, you'll believe so much. It's almost like you're just giving your allegiance to this plan. It's one thing to be curious, like, what is he going to do, whatever, but don't give your allegiance to this plan. Don't get yourself backed into a corner where you end up getting the mark of the beast. You're like, well, it's not the mark of the beast. We got to have military. We got to have a President's Day. Well, there's where you're deceived. We should just love one another. With all the power and might that the United States has, we need to just go and feed everybody and love everybody. And that would be great. And then stand in the field and say, Lord, come, Jesus. You know, if all of us would right now say, Lord, we're done. We're done trying to do it our way. Just please, Lord, make a miracle for all of us with a sincere heart. We give our allegiance to you. We're no longer going to go to war with one another. And if somebody, Russia or something like that, tries to lob a bomb over here or something, and they don't want to cooperate with our peace initiative, then why don't we just say, okay, we're not going to hurt you, Russia. We love you. Publicly announce it. We love you. And we're going to ask you to not go to war. We're not going to go to war. Let's just love one another and see what happens. You know, that might mean that we make the first move. Israel says, you know what, we're getting out of Gaza. We're going to make a two-state solution. Huh? We can't do that with terrorists. Well, I know it can't be done, because too many of you just won't do it. I'm just saying, yeah, if we did that, it would work, but we're not going to do it. And therefore, we're going to end in annihilation. And Jesus Christ is coming to bring to ruin those who are ruining the earth. Their agenda is already out there. They ain't going to back down. And it's not what you think. Trump is part of the agenda. I know you guys are hoping, but I'm just telling you, I'm sorry. It's not what you think it is. They're wrong. They're deceived. And if you give your allegiance to these individuals, if you don't be very careful and seek the Lord and only the Lord at this point, you're not going to get through this, friends. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and go. I hope you have a wonderful evening. And may the Lord's grace and his blessings be with you. We'll see you tomorrow, and have a good one.